The answer that my right honourable friend gave to our honourable friend for Sleaford, what happens if the two-state solution fails? Do the Palestinians forever remain a occupied people? Do they forever remain stateless? And do they forever remain in a situation where more and more of their land is being taken by illegal settlements?
I think it's a very bleak outlook if a two-state solution fails, but it's a bleak outlook for Israel as well. And this is the message, this is our constant conversation with Israeli leaders, that unless they conclude within the kind of time frame I've just been talking about, a two-state solution, then they're faced with one-state solutions. And that poses many profound challenges for Israel, for the nature of their society, in their view. And so that's why it's so important for both sides that this is addressed. And such challenges would be so difficult that I don't want to speculate about what they would lead to at this time.
Richard Burden.
Does the Foreign Secretary think it would be reasonable, either for this country or the international community, to make Israel's continued membership as a full member of the United Nations dependent on meeting conditions laid down by him or indeed by the international community? And if he thinks that would be unreasonable, as I would, why does he apply different standards to the Palestinians? Does he not realise that this position that he's articulated today will again be seen as a classic double standards by the United Kingdom? And why will he not join the over 100 members of this House who've signed an early day motion calling for recognition, France, Spain, the majority of the United Nations General Assembly, and in an online poll, over 1.5 million people supporting upgrade of the Palestinian recognition? Isn't it time to drop the double standards?
Well, what we want, Mr. Speaker, as I've explained, is a successful negotiation. We deal with the hand that history has dealt to us all. And, of course, decisions about Israel's membership of the United Nations were taken long ago, and not about Palestinian membership. So now we have to try to resolve that. We want to see Palestine in the United Nations, at the United Nations, in all the organs of the United Nations. But I stress that the point the Prime Minister made at Prime Minister's questions in answer to his honourable friend, this will only come about as the result of a successful negotiation with Israel. And if that is true, and I haven't heard anybody argue that that is not true, if that is true, then everything we do should be consistent with promoting, facilitating and bringing to success such negotiations. That is our guiding principle and an overriding principle set against all the other factors that understandably people raise.
Jeremy Corbyn.
The Foreign Secretary must be aware of the misery of refugees living for 60 years in the camps in Lebanon and Jordan and Syria, of the people of Gaza imprisoned effectively by the Israeli blockade and the West Bank under occupation. So why is it that he makes a statement today which in effect says that the US and Israel's diplomatic objectives are holding a veto over our vote at the UN tomorrow? Can he not put himself on the side of history, not talk about the hand of history, and vote for unconditional recognition of Palestine?
I don't think I was talking about the hand of history. I think that was a Tony Blair phrase. I haven't adopted that. But the lesson of history, I go back to this point, is that we need a negotiation to succeed. He asked why the opinions of Israel and the United States matter so much in this. And that's because we will only alleviate those problems, we will only help decisively those people to whose plight he rightly draws attention with a negotiated settlement with Israel. And that means, of course, one has to allow for opinion in Israel as well. And which is the nation in the world that has the closest relationships with Israel, the biggest leverage over their foreign policy decisions? It is the United States. And that is why we have to have due regard for their opinions as well. That's the practical and diplomatic approach that a foreign policy has to allow for. As I said, we are exercising the vote of a country and exercising our foreign policy, not making gestures.
The Secretary of State said he'd spoken to Mahmoud Abbas. I'd be interested to know which Israelis he spoke to before putting together this miserable little offer that continues to treat the Palestinians as second-class citizens, if citizens at all. What, apart from the fact that Israel wants it, should lead the Palestinians to fetter their access to the Security Council in the International Court, and what in particular should make them enter negotiations for their own land when the colonisation of that land continues?
Well, I think the honourable member can, of course, make that case, and that it's a very powerfully felt case among Palestinians. But again, he has to remember, I remind the House again, that their plight will only be alleviated if there is a successful negotiation between both parties, between Israel and the Palestinians. And so it is not possible, it would not be wise to disregard all Israeli concerns. Those concerns have to be met as well. Israel has to know that it can reliably live in peace and security, just as Palestinians need to know they can live in a viable sovereign state. And so it is very important to understand both sides of the argument, and I don't think the honourable member's question was a very good example of that.
Mr. Jim Fitzpatrick.
The Foreign Secretary said that he's worried about a backlash from Israel and others. Given that we've got the blockades, the illegal settlements, the wall, the destruction of Palestinian farms, the arrests, the imprisonment, the decades of ignoring UN resolutions, the refugee camps, the abject poverty and the rest, how much worse does he think it can get for the Palestinians?
Well, unfortunately, it could get worse. The Palestinian Authority is in a precarious financial position, although the United Kingdom, under governments of all parties, has a very strong record in that regard, and we will maintain that strong record. But it is a difficult position, and of course, given the nature of the West Bank and the proximity of Israel, the difficult, obviously very difficult relations with Israel, yes, things could get worse. There are ways in which they could get even worse. And so the honourable member is quite right to draw attention to all the factors he drew attention to, but we still need them to be able to restart negotiations, taking into account the concerns of both sides.
Mr. Conan McTaggart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Foreign Secretary has told us about the conditions that he's put to the Palestinian Authority. What I am interested in is what he said to the Israeli government about their threat to withhold the taxes that they owe the Palestinians. What's he doing to prevent that threat being carried out?
We've said what I said in my statement about that, towards the end of my statement, that we would not support any such action by Israel. Of course, we're concerned, among our concerns, is that something like that could happen. But we're very clear, and we've been very clear with Israel already, that we hope they will not take any such steps, that they will not react in an adverse way to the passing of the resolution. So we will, as I've explained in answer to other questions, we will apply our persuasion and pressure to Israel, just as we do to Palestinians.
Morris.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, no one in the House would doubt the integrity or honesty of the Foreign Secretary or the diligent way his team have tried to bring about peace in the Middle East with his usual good humour. But isn't he concerned that we're on the wrong side of the argument? We should be on the side of the right and not the might. Honourable friends on this side of the House have referred to a major poll conducted by YouGov, which shows 76% of respondents in favour of recognising the Palestinian state and only 6% against. And isn't it rather perverse that the Foreign Secretary is saying we shouldn't place preconditions, or the Palestinians shouldn't place preconditions on negotiations, and yet that's precisely what we are doing. We're putting ourselves on the wrong side of the argument, I'm afraid.
Well, I'm grateful to the honourable for stating his arguments in such a measured way, and of course we're on the side, I think on both sides of the House, we're on the side of a successful settlement of the Middle East peace process, of a two-state solution. Our only disagreement is about how to encourage that. And our view is that when faced with such a vote at the UN, we should use our vote in a way that maximises the chances of negotiations, removing preconditions. I know that there are strong feelings about it. There are strong feelings, as has been illustrated in the House, in differing directions on this issue. And he'll understand that we can't determine our foreign policy week to week by opinion poll. Otherwise, there would be many issues on which the honourable member might not agree with the conclusion that would be reached.